All right, and welcome to another episode of Ego Freedom Presents. I am your host, Dustin Rogers. It's not very often that we get to have two people on this show that have met in life, but we get that opportunity today. I want to tell you about my guest. If you're a wildlife person, if you're a mountain person, you're really gonna love my guest. He is a seasoned survivalist, a hunter, a fisherman, and a trapper with a college degree, by the way, in natural resources and wildlife management. He is also a motivational speaker. Now, a few years ago, he was part of the John Huntsman School of Business as part of their lectures in entrepreneurship. Now, in 2015, he appeared on the Discovery Channel series Naked and Afraid, where he was featured in season 5 episode The Darkest Hour, which was, by the way, in Africa. And at 55, he was the oldest participant at the time to successfully complete the 21-day challenge. That's an important part there. And throughout his journey, he demonstrated exceptional survival skills, a positive attitude, and compassion, forging a strong partnership with his partner, Andrea Lopez, who, by the way, is the one we've had on this show as well. So, would you please give a welcome from Montana to Ego Freedom Presents my guest, Mr. Joe Brandl. Hello, Joe.
Hey, how are you? Thank you very much for the invitation to sit down and have a visit with you.
Oh, you bet. You're kind of out there in the you're kind of a tough guy to get a hold of, but I guess that's the way it goes when you're out in the middle of the wilderness, right?
Well, I avoid large crowds. I used to speak in front of several thousand people, and now I just prefer, as you get older, your circle of friends grows smaller and smaller, and family becomes more important. And, I just avoid large crowds. I just don't like that many people around me at one time.
And if you were to go to his Facebook page, and this is identical to what you just said. This is what people will know about you. Nice morning at our new home. Geese, sandhill cranes, couple of rooster pheasants, lots of bird, no traffic, no trains, no sirens, no planes, and helicopters. Hate the city life. That pretty much sums it up, doesn't it?
It does. When we first moved to Montana, I couldn't believe we're moving to the largest city in Montana, which, by perspective of the rest of the world, it's not that big, 100 or I forget how many 100,000 it is, but it isn't that big. And it's fairly blue collar community, a lot of stuff going on here, but a lot of great history, Western history because of the Yellowstone River. So I've really kind of delved into the valley here and stuff, the Billings area, because of the Western history of Lewis and Clark coming through here, the Yellowstone River, the railroad, etc. So it's fitting my lifestyle quite well so far.
Yeah, and you kind of made the kind of a circle. We'll get into this. We were talking a little bit. You kind of started out in Nebraska, through up into Wyoming, and now you're down in Montana. Kind of tell us, Joe, where things began for you.
Well, my family had moved. Well, my grandfather moved from Germany right to Nebraska. They were farmers, and we have 8 brothers and sisters. We were a good Catholic family, and so we moved around quite a bit, different places. I was actually born in San Diego. Lived there for 2 years. My dad, out of the worked for Boeing for a while. He was in the military, Marine, and worked for Boeing, and then they shut down, and we ended up in South Dakota, living right next to the reservation. And then when I was 4 years old in 1964, we ended up buying a small cafe in Edgar, Nebraska. So we packed up everybody in the station wagon, moved down there, went to school there, grew up, small town kid, but worked on the farm and ranch most of my entire life. Decided that out of high school, which was 1978, I was a really good wrestler and I love wildlife. I just love being outdoors. I thought, well, I want to be a biologist or a game warden or a forest ranger. But I had some scholarships to go wrestle at some smaller schools, but they never offered a good wildlife program. And so I got into the University of Nebraska, did the 5 year course there, graduated with a degree in wildlife management, ended up working jobs in Wyoming. I actually had a choice my sophomore year to go to Grants, New Mexico for a seasonal job with the Forest Service or Wyoming for the game and fish. And I really had such a fascination about Wyoming. So after I graduated in '84, I just went ahead and moved out to Wyoming. And I've been there ever since. I raised my 2 sons there, operated a business in DuBois for a number of years. So yeah, Wyoming's just become home. I've lived there longer than any other place.
Well, I think for those who don't know, I think in Nebraska, I think as part of being raised I think you have to get into wrestling because wrestling is a big sport back there in the Midwest. I know that because I come from a family of four wrestlers, so we were really involved in wrestling as well. And so kudos to that. Speaking of wrestling, I kind of want to touch on something when I was sitting there watching Naked and Afraid with you and Andrea when you guys were watching it. You talked about wrestling. If you want to talk about this, because their their wrestling coach was kind of pivotal in your life, wasn't he?
My father died when I was 10 years old. He died of complications of diabetes. And so I had two mentors in my life, which was my wrestling coach, John Lucero, who's still alive and lives in Colorado. And the second one was my scout leader, Orrin Dillon. And basically, when they say they mentored me in that day and time, they just kicked your butt when you got out of line. And so my passions became wrestling and scouting. And of course, wrestling goes by the way. I ended up coaching wrestling for a number of years at the high school where I lived in Du Bois. But scouting became even bigger for me in Du Bois. I was a scout leader for 30 some years. And the passions that I had for outdoor survival, outdoor education, that's what I did. And so I guess God had a plan that I wasn't going to be a biologist. I wasn't going to be a forest ranger. I wasn't going to be a game warden. It just wasn't in the cards. What I was meant to do was mentor kids. And so I did that through coaching and more importantly in scouting. And so everything, even when I was training for Naked and Afraid, I would test everything out on my kids. Okay, here's a trap we're going to build. Here's this. Here's that. So anything I needed that I thought I needed to know to prepare myself for this survival 21 days in Africa, I ran it through my scouts. Said, look, here's what I need to know. I'm going to teach it to you. I want to see how well you do with it. So I used, that principle of scouting to help prepare for Naked and Afraid, but also wrestling because I viewed it as one of the biggest matches in my life. So I lost weight, made sure I was tan. I walked barefoot. I gave up anything that was not going to have in Africa. No cigars, no scotch, no bread, no nothing. All the way through, I trained very hard as a wrestler because I was not going to lose this battle of survival. And then I trained with my scouts to practice skills that I hadn't really done a lot of, but I knew it would be important to know those in Africa.
Well, it's amazing how the skills that you developed in wrestling, how you were able to go back to those skills and utilize those skills to get trained for going into this Naked and Afraid episode, a part of your life. And the fact that you decided to include your kids in that, I think that in itself says a lot about you, Joe, is that you're really involved with the kids and you want them to be involved as well. What kind of reaction when they found out that you were going to be on Naked Afraid? What kind of reaction did they have?
It was interesting because I didn't even tell my fiance at the time that I was going to do it. We watched the show. I go, God, I can't believe how dumb these people are. I go, I could do so much better. And it wasn't until after I had done my interview, with a camera, kind of a Zoom thing, that I said, I want you to watch this thing. And so I pulled up the interview from the people in California. She goes, what? I go, I'm going to be on Naked and Afraid. And the kids were like, Dad, it's perfect for you. But I'll tell you what happened. It came with a price because at that time that I was going to leave in April to go on Naked and Afraid, my first wife, we had just recently gotten divorced, and she was really struggling from cancer. Well, she had cancer in '86, but she was still struggling health issues because of the treatment of cancer. And she was back in Omaha. And I told my boys before I left, I go, don't worry, I'll be back. Everything will be okay. And she passed away on the when I was in Africa. And I didn't know that. And so the boys were upset because I wasn't there for them. But what also happened was that when I did finally get out and I did find out, well, during the time that I was in there, it was on the 28th of April. Mary Ellen at the time was communicating with the one of the guys in Naked and Afraid that were there in Africa, and they knew about Jean's health issues and knew what I was struggling with it. And they called and said, how's Jean doing? She said she passed away. And the producer said, can we tell Joe? And she goes, let me talk to the boys. And the boys said no. Dad needs to focus on what he's doing there. He's doing what he loves to do. It's not going to make any difference at this time. So don't say a word to him, because there's been other episodes where that's happened. They told the person there and they left. And they didn't want that to interfere with what was a lifelong dream of mine, to test my skills, in the wilderness. So they told him no. And that's why I didn't know till after I got out. Um, so their reaction, when I got back, they were going through a grieving period and stuff. And so when I got back, it was a time for me that I just had to decompress, go through the grieving process with them. And then, of course, time, healed a lot of that grief.
And that had to have been tough because you already knew going out there that when you were going out there to Naked and Afraid and to do all this filming, you already had it in the back of your mind. Obviously, I assume that you were thinking that, your mind was also on that, what was happening. I know I've had parents both passed away from cancer, so I understand what you're talking about. Um, did that at all, knowing all that, did that push you to continue to go on through Naked and Afraid? I mean, the fact actually that your kids said do not tell him because they knew that this was a lifelong dream of yours tells you a lot about the way you raised them.
Absolutely. They're both good boys. They're tough kids. They were raised in the wild. They were hunting and fishing all their life. But one of the things that Andrea and I did is that we did a lot of praying. And I was praying that Jean would be okay, and she was praying for, I can't remember who it was, but and so we prayed together very often, never in front of the camera, just on our own. When we do get away from stuff, we would, pray for each other's persons. But prayer and faith was a big part of our time together. And it was one of those quiet times that we had, because we made a pact from the very beginning. As soon as we met each other and began our journey, we made a quiet pact to ourselves that nobody knew about, that we would not discourage, despair, say anything negative about the other person. They said they matched us up so that there would be drama. I'm Republican, conservative, Wyoming cowboy, da 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 da. I was making gay jokes to the producers, and of course, I didn't know she was gay. And so all along, they expected this fireworks to go off of, here's this Wyoming guy, has got this little gay gal from Moab, there's going to be some sparks. It never happened. It never happened. It wasn't meant to happen. And they were impressed with that.
Well, it was interesting when I was talking with Andrea and I brought this up. Normally, like you said, you've been a fan of the show, you've watched it, and I think when you watch it in general, you're just watching this guy and the gal they meet for the first time. In the first couple of minutes, your own mind, you're thinking, okay, this is not going to go well. These two are going to clash like crazy. But in watching how you and Andrea, from the moment you two met, I think people could sense, or at least I could sense, that this was going to go pretty well because you guys really seemed to hit it off right out the gate.
My first, I practiced it because I wanted to know to myself what was the first thing I was going to say to her. What was going to be my first introduction? And my introduction was, I've waited all my life to meet you.
So let's real quick, let's jump back to when you found out that you actually got on to the show Naked and Afraid. What was your initial reaction once you got the call and said, Joe, you're going? What was your initial reaction?
I guess I was surprised. I didn't realize there was such a process you have to go through. I mean, they just don't call you up and say, "Yeah, you're on." It may happen with some contestants; they like them because they got some celebrity background or something, um, or they think they're perfect personality for the show. I was just an average guy from Wyoming that wanted to get on there, and so I made a lot of efforts to practice skills, to send in the skills. I had a great casting uh, director guy that was great, Corey Rico. Um, and of course they make you wait and wait and wait. And so even after I knew I was going to get on, then they flew me to California to do the interviews and put you through a psychological test. That was really weird, that whole part of it. But I didn't know where I was going. They said, "You're on the chart." Some gal called and said, "Look, you're on the chart. You're definitely going. We can't tell you where." So I said, "Well, I don't want to go to Central America. I don't want to go to Alabama. I would really like to test my skills someplace awesome." And when they finally got the call, these were just weeks in between, and said, "You're going to Africa," I was just like, Thank you, Jesus, for I couldn't believe it. I mean, the cradle of mankind, Africa, and my heart, part of my heart is still in Africa,
Oh, I'm
because
sure it
but
is.
I couldn't believe it. I could not believe I was going to Africa. So then again, because my wildlife background, I bought books on everything I could think about Namibia, Africa.
Well, that's amazing. And you know what's really interesting? You were talking about how this partnership between you and Andrea came together. Like it came from something beyond, right? Because originally she was supposed to go to Thailand, I think. Originally she was supposed to go to Thailand, and then they said, "Oh no, you're going to Africa." And so there was obviously something out there that brought you two together. And what do you think was the key to you two working so well together? What was the one key you think?
Um, for me, it was compassion. Um, she just seemed so vulnerable. She had some good outdoor skills. You know, I knew she'd be okay. Um, she was very timid in a lot of things. You know, hesitant in so many things. And I knew no matter what, whether she was there or not, I was going to be the best I could be. And an interesting thing that I don't know if she told you about this, but one of the mantras, I have a lot of mantras, and one of my main mantras there was fail, fail forward. I've always taught that. Focus on what you can control at the moment. Don't worry about yesterday. Don't worry about tomorrow. Focus on what you can control. But when I was going through some of my deepest moments in my life, I always believed in to just breathe. Just breathe. Ironically, the first gal that I met at the airport that was one of the guides had some tattoos on her arm. She was showing me around doing all this stuff. And I looked at her tattoo and I said, "Oh my God, you have a tattoo, just breathe." I said, "That's what I believe in. I've been saying that for years now. Just breathe, relax." Come to find out, Andrea on her wrist in white ink had just breathe.
Wow. No,
Two
I did
people.
not. She did not say anything, but that is amazing.
That is crazy. And I knew, you know, I don't believe in coincidences. I'm a man of good faith. Um, it was just so important to me to be the best I could be. And on a card that we did a postcard, and you know, as a wrestler or as a sports person, it's always, you know, you always leave it on the mat. You leave everything on the field. And on the back of our postcard that we put out that we we accepted the challenge and we left it all on the field out there. We left it on the island. We did everything the best that we could be, and either succeed or fail. We knew that we had done our very, very best, and then it was time to go at that time. Then, so we had no regrets about anything that happened. You know, the fire, all the crazy things, because we knew we'd left it all on the field. And she knows that as an athlete, also as a softball player and as an athlete. And we talked about that. And I said, that's what I want to put on our postcard on the back, was that we had left it all there.
So this is for those who still aren't aware, this is a 21-day challenge. And you at the time were the oldest contestant on Naked and Afraid, being 55. Did you know that when you actually got cast that you had been the oldest contestant at the time?
No, it was just to be the best that I could be, and do everything I could to make our camp as comfortable as possible, to make my partner as comfortable as possible. There was nothing I wouldn't have done for her. Nothing. I would have sacrificed anything for her. So it was important to me at many times during our 21 days that I would go out of my way to make sure she was warm, make sure that the bugs weren't going to get her, make sure that she had something to eat, to make sure that she was okay when she was going through some emotions and things. It became to me that I was going to be the protector. And on days that she said, I can't do it anymore, I said, it's going to be so great when we do this together. I said, what do you need? What can I get you to make sure this is going to happen? And so that was a focal point of mine, was to do everything I could to make sure it was right. I told the producers, don't ask me to say anything stupid. Don't ask me to do anything stupid. I won't. I'm here to be the best that I can be. And in doing so, I'm going to make sure that Andrew was going to be okay throughout the 21 days.
Yeah, what's interesting is obviously it's a 21-day challenge, and when they edit everything out, they put everything down to 45 minutes or to an hour. So there's a lot of stuff that you don't see, obviously, that you guys have gone through. But some of the stuff that you did go through, like you mentioned, you lost your cover. You caught fire. Tell us a little bit about that. What happened on that?
Well, interesting. When we first got there, I looked at the survival guide, who I'd gotten to know well, and I said, "Are you kidding me? This is where we're staying." I wanted an island with bamboo and Robinson Crusoe because I like building shelters. I know knots and lashings, but I was also prepared with the tools that I had, and I manipulated the tools that we got to keep without a doubt. Um, so I got exactly what I wanted, and so when we she goes, "Well, what are we going to do for a shelter?" I said, "Well, here's a tree. We'll chop the branches. We'll make them hang down. We'll fill the outside with more branches. We'll dig out the sand a little bit. We'll build us a fire. We're not going to cut any fire. We're just going to collect firewood. We're going to have the long, heavy wood on one side, the short, more fire starting on the other side. Because in the middle of the night, we got to get up. We're groggy. We can't see. We want to make sure we're safe bringing in the wood." And so we kept that fire going 24/7. She stayed in camp quite a bit. Her feet weren't quite as tough as she had hoped, and which was fine with me. I like foraging anyway, and I would spend hours hiding from the camera crew just to go do my thing. And so, as it dried out, because we had the fire constantly going, because it was down in the 40s at night. And one of the first things when I built this mat bed and all these lot of reeds and rushes is the to make kind of a long story longer, the bugs were so bad crawling over the top of it. It drove her crazy. And I said, "Oh my God, there's a huge something crawled over me. It's huge. Don't smash it, just brush it off." So we're spooning in from the fire, which I was trying to be as careful as possible with her. And but I knew that insects, ants, we run on an ant thing. Insects do not like ash or lime because insects are acidic, lime is basic, so it burns them. So after a day or so, we had enough ash. I spread it all inside our shelter, and that got rid of all the bugs. I just kept adding to our shelter. Even at one time, I built a fire because we were going to get some cold temperatures, and we covered the coals with ash, slept on top of that. But in the meantime, because the fire was constantly going, it dried out all the canopy on this tree. And one day, the wind was really coming through the tree one night. I said, "I'm going to block it with some cattails." And so I got big bundles of cattails and reeds, and I blocked kind of the doorway where the wind was coming in. And the leaves would catch on fire once in a while, but you could just knock them down. Leaves don't burn very well anyway. Well, and this was day 19. I mean, we're almost at the end. And I wake up, and you can see in the film, I go, "Oh my God, the shelter's on fire." Those cattails, when they're dry, are just like a wick. And it just shot straight up into that canopy and started the thing on fire. And you can see in the first thing I wanted to do was to run around and grab the camera that was tied on the back of it, because I said, "We got to keep that camera. We can't let it burn up." And of course, there's a camera in front showing what's going on that you see. And then she goes, "Oh, our cameras are in there. Our diary cameras are in there." She goes, "I'm going to go in and get them." She tried to run in there. Of course, on the show, it says she's trying to save her grandfather's fire steel, which I had a whole workbench shop set up with outside of the camp that everything was there. And she was trying to get the cameras, and when she went to pick it up, it burned her fingers. So I went in there and just wall of flame and got the cameras, put them out, pushed them out. And then we just sat there, and she just started crying and crying and crying. I go, "What's wrong?" Because I was going, "This is crazy. This is so crazy." I go, "I can't." And I was just laughing. I thought it was just funnier than heck. And so she's just crying because she's having these flashbacks of fire and flame. I'm laughing, but I'm trying to comfort her at the same time. And big tears are just rolling down her face. And of course, our survival guides who are across the river, they're there in case we get hippos, dangerous. They see the flames. Guy comes, my survival guy comes running through the hippo swamp and gets there. He goes, "Is everything okay?" I go, "Oh, no, everything's great. We're good. Good." She's upset a little bit. So I go, "It's okay." So she goes, "What are we going to do for a fire?" I go, "Look, we got a huge fire." I go, I'll just pull out a bunch of branches, and then I just built a better fire. And then she laid curled up by the fire, and all night I just pushed hot sand towards her. So the next day she's like, "What are we gonna do?" I go, obvious shelter by noon. So by noon, I had taken all the extra sticks and cattails. We had a beautiful little lean-to shelter with warm ashes and sand and stuff, and it was great.
You know what's interesting? Going back to that, yeah, a lot of what you describe, you see it. It's on Naked. It's on the episode. You see it catching fire. What you described, though, is some stuff you didn't make, obviously, the cut that we see. But I think what was really interesting, Joe, is when she was going through that tough time. And again, this goes back to your character and what you'd already determined when you guys were together that you were going to be there no matter what. There was a moment where you were kind of like a little standoffish, letting her do her thing, but there was also a moment where you were just her friend and just let her know that things were going to be okay. What did that moment do for you internally when you saw her going through all of this?
She needed that moment to reflect by herself. And so I sensed that with her because we'd been together for 19 days. And so she needed a moment to collect her thoughts just by herself. And she's staring at the fire. And then later on, when I knew that she's starting to breathe and things are going to get a little better, and then I approach her and say, "We're okay." And I gave her a hug and everything's great. But you had to give her space because she has all this going on in her mind, and she doesn't need somebody to just grab her, unless it was family or something. I just knew I needed to step back and let her have her moment, because I saw it. I saw it in her eyes. I saw it in her posture that she needed that moment to herself to kind of collect her thoughts and things. And and that's important to people, that you just don't rush in all the time. You just let them have their time. And so that was important. And it was very obvious to me because of the way she stood, the way look on her face, the tears coming down her face. I knew everything was going to be fine, but she didn't want to hear that at the moment. She didn't want to be comforted at that time. She needed her space and she needed her time.
The episode was called The Darkest Hour, and that seemed to be a dark point for her to overcome. For you, what was your darkest part of being out there?
I didn't allow that. I never allowed darkness. I never allowed negative thoughts. I never wished for something I didn't have. My mantra was, the most important was, focus on what you can control. I could control how much firewood we have. I could control, for my ability to go out and get wood. I could control catching birds and animals because of my skills. I was not going to allow negativity. I was not going to allow any thoughts that was going to go against what my goal was to be the best. So I, I know the darkest hour a lot was for her, what she went through. I think the title more. She's featured a lot in there because she didn't poop for 21 days, and she was in camp a lot, and they filmed her a lot. I was a little disappointed that they didn't show the bow and arrow, they didn't show the traps, they didn't show so much of the stuff, the shoes, the sandals, all the stuff I made, and that was okay because even when we first started the fire, she wasn't getting it. It was that little crappy fire starter her grandfather had. And I had this huge 5.5 inch one with pitchwood that could have started a brick on fire. And so I was laughing, but I knew she needed to shine. I knew I had all the skills. I didn't have to prove anything. There was nothing for me to prove except for do what you do best. And so when the fire was trying to get started, she kept saying, "You do it, you do it." And I go, "No, it's your grandfather's fire steel. You have to start this." And even though I had to intercede just a little bit with smaller stuff and things, we got the fire going. It was a huge beginning for her because it was a big accomplishment. And I just cheer her on. I could have started the fire in 30 seconds, but that wasn't the point. The point was, we're a team and we both have to contribute. And so I thought that was a good defining moment for us. Even when we jumped up, she goes, "Oh, chest bump." She goes, "No, maybe we shouldn't."
Yeah, I
And so,
remember. I remember that. I remember seeing
and so,
that.
and then we gave each other a hug, and that made me feel so good because I've been mentoring kids my whole life, and it was just one of those moments to where she felt so successful. She felt value in this partnership, this relationship, And that was just the beginning of a wonderful 21 days. I mean, for me, I would have stayed 2 more weeks, but she was convinced we're going home.
Well, for some reason, she kept bringing up lasagna. She was telling me that, and I remember I think she was talking about it in the episode. And when we were talking, she also told me also that she was thinking about lasagna. So lasagna was also obviously on the top of her mind. When you talk about letting her do her thing, letting her start the fire, it kind of goes back to you and when you're working with the kids because you can jump in through scouting and all your survivalist skills and working with the kids you could jump in and do it for them but there's so much more value and they get so much more out of it when they know that they've been over able to overcome their obstacles on their own and not have to have help from themselves. Is that what you think?
It is, and it's another one of my points that I teach constantly is fail, fail forward. Okay, I failed the first time. I'm not going to just go backward. No, what do I need to do that's going to make it right? So you always fail forward. I mean, Thomas Edison and the Wright brothers and all those people that could have just quit, but they kept going forward, failing, failing. 1,000 times they failed, but eventually they got it right. And so you always want to fail forward, and that was important, with some of the things that didn't quite work out for us. It's like, well, that could have been better. This happened, that happened, but it's okay. We're just going to fail forward. So when people have that mindset, they don't get so disillusioned and negative by, oh, I just failed that. It's okay. I expect you to fail. I hope you fail 10,000 times in your life, but always fail forward. So even when things didn't quite go right, or we just had to sit down and refigure a different way to do it. But I also knew that she had certain skills like twisting cordage and stuff, and she didn't mind sitting in the camp. It was so boring for me, but we needed it to lash things together. So she was good. I showed her some different ways to do it quicker and faster, but we just didn't have the stuff that I would have liked to have, tree bark and all this great to make pieces of rope. We just had 3 foot pieces of reeds. That was it. So, and there are things I would have done different now that I think about. I would have done, oh, I should have done that, should have done that. But again, it was important that she contributed to the success, that she felt value, that she was comfortable as much as possible, and that she had time to reflect on the thing. So I wouldn't sit next to her all day in camp. I had things to do. She had things to do. And then when the cameras were away, or we would walk away from camp to have our own little gatherings and stuff, because we didn't want everything on camera. We wanted to have our time together that we could do the things that, made us closer.
Yeah, and what's interesting is you don't hear that, and I don't know, what other contestants what they do, obviously with their partners, but it really shows a lot about you two taking the time away to just, be with each other, kind of discuss things away from the cameras, away from all of that craziness, so you guys can stay on the same level, so you guys are always in communication and working together, and I think that says so much with you and Andrea being able to do that as a team, not individually, because I'm sure there was that going on. You each had to go do your own thing, but as a team to come together, to work together for the outcome, which of course is to survive the 21-day challenge.
Exactly. And again, we both needed our space. You still need your space at times when you're together, and so we allowed that with each other. But again, the times that we would go out and just watch the sun go down, I just put my arm around her and say, "Isn't this amazing? Isn't this amazing?" And so yeah, and then when she had things that she wanted to discuss and it didn't want to be in front of the personal things, we just turned off the cameras, walked away from it and stuff, and talked about things that we didn't necessarily want the world to know. But we had enough trust in each other that we could say a lot of things. And I had a lot of questions for her too, about everything. And of course, we laughed a lot. She had so much laughter, and she had such a great attitude. No matter what happened, even in difficult times when it forced her to be sad or to think about some of the things that happened in her life, it wasn't long after that she was happy, willing to do anything. I mean, she was a go getter, pleasant to be around. Anything I asked her to do, she was happy to do it. I mean, she really worked hard, even at getting firewood when she was so tired, and so yeah. I mean, she was great. She was just great to have around because she was so positive. Um, and just a good person. She was genuinely a very good person, and I knew that.
Well, there's a couple times, Joe. I don't know if you were so good, but let's talk about some of the food that you were eating. Because let's see if I remember. I tried to remember. I see you guys had a slug. You had let's see a grub, an egg, a bird, and I forgot what one other thing. Oh, a chameleon in there. And I remember she was asking you how things were tasting, and you were just, like it was the greatest thing on earth until after she got done eating it. And then you kind of said, well, I might have been not honest about that,
Oh
right?
yeah, yeah. I remember when I told her Grubalicious. She goes, "Oh God!" She goes, "Oh," I go, "It's Grubalicious. You got to eat it. You might as well laugh about it." But even when we cooked that lizard, and we ate part of the tail, each ate a back leg, a front leg, and then we cut the head off. We crunched the head, and she goes, "Oh," and it was not her comfort zone whatsoever. Now the egg, the only little egg we found, was like the most delicious egg in the world. But the first night I caught that first bird and we made a stew out of it, and I'd found some wild herbs and things. I mean, it was so filling. Of course, your stomachs are shrinking anyway that she couldn't even eat the rest of the broth. But it was so nice, just the two of us, because everybody was gone. They were gone, and then I caught the bird that night. So just the two of us got to share in that. And the cameras were on, because there always are. But that was a very special moment that our first big meal. Um, and she believed in odd day success. So we had a lot. That was the 13th, the 15th, the 17th, the 19th. I mean, we had all these cool things that happen on odd days. She believed it. And I go, good. Is that what works? Then I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
It was definitely, there's no doubt, regardless, you guys got along well. That's fantastic. But it was physically demanding, wasn't it?
The biggest physical part of it was the fact of lack of sleep. So you're laying there, you're always awake because you can always see the fires. I'm sure I must have snored and drove her crazy with it because she'd laugh about it. But um, you're just so cold at night because you got nothing to really. I mean, I made a reed blanket a little bit and it was okay, but I also worried about sparks, falling on the blanket. Um, so you're so physically beat. You don't have a lot of proteins. You have little or no fats. Fats are so important into your diet to maintain, your health. And of course, nutrition, nutrients, and vitamins and electrolytes and all that. And we're not getting any of that whatsoever. So now your body, you're losing weight, you're losing a lot of body fat. She knows that right away that, her breasts had shrunk up so much, she just, had no fat hardly at all. She hadn't much to lose anyway. I was getting thinner. So during the day, we were just able to nap, which was good. Wasn't much action going on, but you just had to counter it with, naps during the day in the shade and then do the best you could at night. But physically, I consider myself a pretty stout guy. And there were times where I just couldn't, what a log should have been nothing to pick up. I could barely drag it. I just had no energy. And it was because of the lack of nutrients, of food. I mean, we had some, but we were never starving. I never felt that we were starving. We got four birds, one bird, then two birds in the same trap, then another bird. And then we got that catfish on day, I don't know, 19 or something. Then we caught one more bird right at the end on day 20. So I was never hungry, at all. We had all the water we needed to boil. It, but again, it wasn't enough to sustain a lot of physical activity. So in a survival situation, you have to be aware of that you're not going to go climb a mountain. You have to conserve your calories. And that's not difficult to do. You're in a base camp, but at no time, and I don't think she ever said that she was starving. We never talked about hamburgers and pizza, and the whole lasagna thing was. They told us when you get out, what do you want to eat? And we almost both said at the same time, lasagna, which was so crazy because it's like, oh my god, I said lasagna too, and it was great. So
Yeah,
yeah.
but you didn't say food that you wanted, right? What
Oh,
was
my
it? What was
scotch
it
and
that you wanted?
my scotch and cigar.
Yeah. She was kind of blown away here. She's thinking food, and all you could think about was your scotch and your
Oh my
cigar.
god, I bought some Cuban cigars out with me and a beautiful flask of scotch. I said, I just can't wait to get out and have a drink of that beautiful scotch, smoke a nice cigar. And I did. and it was beautiful. but but again, the choice of what you want to eat, even when you first got out, say you can have any treat that you want. She wanted Doritos and a Coke or something. I wanted a Snickers and a squirt or a 7 Up or something. They go, we can't get yours, Joe. They don't have that. I go, it doesn't matter. But I remember eating her little Doritos and drinking that pop. And after we got off the boat, did the whole boat scene and everything. And then that night, we got the lasagna and the ice cream and stuff. So yeah, it was great.
So obviously, there are a lot of dangers out there. To you, what was the biggest danger out there?
I knew about the hippos. I know that hippos kill more people than any other African animal, not because they're so ferocious. The fact there's a lot of hippos near villages. And that's why black bears kill more people back east than out here because of the concentration of black bears versus people. Same thing with hippos versus people. I was hoping to see some snakes. I didn't really want to see a mamba because I knew they were aggressive, but there were some other ones that were venomous that I was hoping to find at night. Um, and I knew there wasn't going to be any leopards or lions because of the activity. We did find a leopard bait, which we got the cow skull off of it. I got it knocked out of a tree. But I knew I was wise enough not to go wander around at night because of the hippos, because I knew what they uh, provide in the sense of danger, because we were sitting right in their pasture. I mean, they came out of the swamp, they grazed right in front of us. Andrea, unbeknownst to me, until the next day, that crawled out of the shelter to get a look at a hippo. I go, what the hell were you thinking? And she goes, I just want to get up close. I go, you go, girl. I go, you should have told me. She goes, well, you were sleeping. So,
Yeah, I
okay.
I remember that part. I remember that part in watching the episode that you were just zonked out. You were like had no care. She was as alert as could be, and here's this hippo just breathing right on her, and it wasn't until the next day that she told you
Oh,
about
yeah.
it.
Yeah, you just see her little white eyes just beating around like that. Then there she is crawling out there and stuff.
Yeah.
But so no, because I grew up, or I spent a large part of my life in the Wind River Mountains with grizzlies, um, and I've seen them. I've encountered them, etc. I just know you don't test nature. And so you just be smart, don't decrease your odds of being out there. And they told us to don't wander out at night. The night we did go out, they were with us, and the whole setup. And I'm in the getting water, and that's all set up. There's a lot of things on. And I said I'm willing to do whatever it is to say certain lines, to do certain things, to create, some type of thrill to it. I'm happy to do that if that's going to add to the show, the drama of the show. Just don't make me do anything that I would say no, that's stupid. So and we did that. I mean, and a lot of people don't realize it, that some of that's a take. And when I did my show in front of the whole town, um, every commercial that came on, I say, okay, here's what really happened. And so there's a lot that people don't know, but that's reality TV. But I know that what we did was real. We didn't cheat. We didn't do anything that was out of the norm. They didn't have to help us. We did it right, and we left it all in the bush.
Well, you know what, and what was really real was the connection that you two made.
Without a doubt. I mean, we still stay friends. I don't follow her so much on Facebook. I'm not a big follower of families and kids and so on and so forth. I follow Facebook because I like history and learning survival skills, so on and so forth. And so even after Naked and Afraid, I ended up with 3 or 4 thousand friends and stuff, and I'm down to 600 because it's not as important to me in my life. In fact, there's a lot of people. I just told the people at work a few months ago that I was on the show, and of course they're just thrilled, and they call me Naked Joe or Naked and Afraid. But I'm very blessed to have experienced something like that not very many people have. I know we did it right. I know that I did well. I know I took care of my partner. Would I do it again? They tried calling me for the 40-day and it didn't work out. So I was never called back again. She was too. And she called me and asked me what I thought. I said, well, you hated the 21 days. I go, why would you want to do the 40? I go, focus on your fiance at the time. Focus on having a family. That's what you want to do. I go, you have nothing to prove to anybody. I said, so if it's that important to you, go do it. But I think there are more important things in life right now than a reality television show. So again, I'm blessed. I get a lot of Texas and Facebook messaging when it comes on, and people say, "Oh, Joe, I just saw your show again," and then I just laugh, and so it was a great experience. It humbled me without a doubt. It made me appreciate things in life that I may not have as much, and it made me a stronger individual. But again, it's a pretty ultimate test, for it's going out there, and you could do it on your own, and I've done wilderness trips on my own with very little, over a weekend and things, and not a big deal. But I mean, my God, Africa, I mean, how cool is that?
Yeah, not everybody definitely gets to do that. We talked about the physical challenge, but tell me, was there any part of it mentally where you thought, okay, this is a little bit tougher than I thought it was going to be, or a little bit harder mentally that you thought?
Yeah. When you get out, they call you back up and they want you to say lines that they're going to edit into it. And one of the lines was, Africa is tougher than I thought, or something about that. And I said, well, I never said that line. They said, well, can you just say it? I go, don't use it in a text that I wouldn't have said it. So they got me walking through it, saying that Africa is, crazy tough, whatever, wearing down. Now there were certainly days that I was just worn out, without question. I didn't, I wasn't mentally beat, but I was physically exhausted. And on those days, I just go to her, I go, Andrea, I am physically beat. I need to go lay down. She goes, I'll go get firewood. I'll go get this. I'll go do that. And so she just stepped up to the plate. But there were certainly days, not a lot of them, mostly during the day when I was trying to do more than I physically could, because I thought, okay, I gotta get this, I gotta get this, gotta get this, because I gotta get everything ready for the night. And I just have to sit down and go, wow, wow, I'm whooped, God. I'm whooped. And I need to take a break. And so I would just take a break, re-reflect on what I need to be, allow my body to cool down, to relax a little bit, breathe, and then go back again. But I had so convinced myself before I started this whole challenge was to not let anything provide anything that was going to be negative. You just had to stay positive. I'm sure there were moments where I'm exhausted, I'm tired. There was no quit. That was never going to happen. But I certainly was the most exhausted I'd ever been in my life at that moment, to where I just physically was beat. And again, it was just part of the nutrition and health and stuff that you just don't have. But I've never gone 21 days with that little amount of food.
Going into that, did you prepare though? I mean, when you talked to Andrea, Andrea said she prepared for that. She built up her body ahead of time, knowing that this was going to probably happen. Did you kind of do the same thing?
Oh, at least, even though I wasn't sure I was going, I knew it would be good for my body in case I did go. So I dropped weight down to, I think, 202 or 203. I gave up coffee, gave up my cigars, my bourbon. I ate no bread. I kind of a paleo diet. Um, I walked barefoot, out in the Badlands and on gravel. Went to the tanning booth, made sure my butt was tan. I'm usually pretty dark anyway. And even during the months before I left, I practiced that on the airplane trip. I never took anything that I wasn't going to eat. When I got to the lodge, I only wanted fruits and vegetables and meat. So I knew that I needed to train my body for this experience. I didn't want to go in there fat and just live off the fat. That just wasn't the way to do it. And so, again, it was like a huge wrestling match to me. I was going to train to get my body and mind so that I could accept any challenge that came my way. I was ready, and there was nothing that happened during that time that I would say was ever overwhelming. And it's because I prepared. I prepared very well. My mind and body, I was just prepared for whatever was going to happen.
And of course, along with that, as you mentioned when we started this, was having the faith as well as too. That helped you a lot.
Faith is huge. I was glad Andrea had good faith. As a struggle with her family, one part being Catholic, one being Mormon, and her being gay. We talked a lot about that and the struggles that she went with. I was struggling with, I'd gone through this crazy, crazy divorce. And now my boy's mother was, organs were failing. Um, and we talked about those things to ourselves, and that's what we prayed a lot about, is that we prayed for those. We told ourselves we were there. I'm Catholic, so I believe in penance. So we were there. In my mind, I was going to suffer. If I had to go through some suffering for healing for, Jean, the boy's mother. God, I cannot remember who Andrew was praying for, but it was somebody that was pretty powerful. Might have been her grandfather, possibly, but I'm not sure. But anyway, so that's what we did. So, whether we prayed together or I was just out sitting underneath a tree somewhere, I talk to God all the time saying, help make me strong, help me get through this, help me make the right decisions, Um, I am what I need to be, make me what I need to be. So there was a lot on my minds of that, but I wasn't going to allow that part of grieving to interfere with what I was doing. It was always in the back of my mind, but I was not going to allow it to overwhelm me to just physically and mentally break down because there was nothing I could do about it. I could only focus on what I could control at the moment, which was getting a fire started, having plenty of wood, food, water, and shelter.
Well, I tell you, you've definitely been through a lot, and this has definitely been a no, it's been a very inspirational interview. Hearing some of the struggles you went through and what you went through with being on Naked and Afraid, the fact that you were there for Andrea, you guys worked as a team. Just want to switch gears real quick and let's talk about, there's a lot of people out there who don't get to, they don't go out and enjoy the outdoors. Maybe that's just because of where they've been raised. What kind of advice would you give someone who hasn't really experienced the outdoors or the benefits of it? What kind of advice would you give to them?
Well, a lot of people believe you have to live in the mountains. You got to live in the wilderness to experience the wilderness, and you don't. You can live in a city and go to the park. Even New York City has Central Park. Um, there are natural areas around most cities, especially in urban areas. Of course, in Utah, vast amount of beautiful country and stuff, and you're blessed to experience like that. But most people, majority of people, and they live in urban areas. I mean, that's the way it is. Um, feel like, well, I could never do anything outdoors. I don't think I could accomplish that. Doesn't mean you have to go hunting or trapping or even go fishing. But I tell people, and I have kind of a TikTok thing I found that my kids talk me into about get your kids outside. And so I started a whole series this spring about when I take my dog for a walk, I'd always stop, put the camera on, and go, look, get your kids outside. Here's what you need to do. You need to make snowballs. You need to dye snow. You need to look at trees. You need to walk along the river and look for animals during certain times of the year. You need to get a bird feeder. All these things to expose you to some type of nature. And I said, get the kids outside, get them off the phones, get them off the television, the video games, and plan your weekends. That yard work, things like that can wait. A job can wait sometimes, but to me, it's not just the individual; it's about your children. And you need to expose children to the outdoors. They need to know what bugs are. They need to know what animals are. They need to know what animal tracks are and who made those things. And they need to get in the water somewhere and look through a piece of PVC with plastic on the end to look underneath the water. They need to roll rocks to see what's under the rock. So it's all there. It's all close to where everybody lives, even in the most rural areas in the world there are wild areas because wildlife oftentimes has moved into these cities. Um, and so it's always there. So never be afraid to take these small steps. But if you're afraid to do it by yourself, do it with friends, do it with kids. Um, find a partner that you want to do it, even just a walk. But while you walk, leave your damn phone at home and just walk and pick some leaves, and just look at them once or, look at something on the ground. Quit looking at your phone and look up at the stars and look up at the clouds and look at the trees and the grass. And there's so much at your feet, but you got to get on your hands and knees to see it. And I think couples would grow together better if they both got on their knees on the grass somewhere, even if they're just having a picnic, and just looked for something. Even if you have phobias about bugs or spiders, there's other things you can do. You can go to a zoo for crying out loud and just experience animals and learn about it. But more than anything, you got to get outside. You got to get your kids outside. Get
Yeah.
off this technology and social media.
Yeah, and you kind of got to you got to every once in a while you've got to get away from the noise. And I said this before is that there's a lot you can hear in silence. Just get away from the noise and there's a lot you can hear in silence. You know, So what's next for you, Joe? I mean, what have you been up to since then? What's life been like since the episode?
Um, a lot. I'm writing a book called God Was My CEO, because I've had so many miracles happen in my life, and it just keeps going on and on. So of course we moved out of Wyoming. We're in Montana. I signed up to teach outdoor education classes through adult education through the Billings schools. I'm going to start teaching hunter safety, through the state of Montana. We just recently moved out in the country, and so I want to spend time, working on the place, do the things I need to do, spend time with the grandkids. My wife's a big rock nut, so we go walk the Yellowstone river so she can find agates and things. I just want to fish. I want to spend time hunting birds with my dog. My grandkids are young, they're not even 5 yet. And so I'm looking forward to camping under the stars, showing them how to start a fire. Um, I really want to be a good grandfather. Um, as I was a father to my kids, and I mentored a lot of kids, I think it's because when my dad died, I didn't have that figure. So because two men in my life stepped up to the plate and made sure I was going to be okay, I felt that I owe that to other kids. And not only just kids, but adults that really feel like they want to learn something. So there's adults here in Billings that's never um, did not time, that doesn't know how to start a fire with a bow and drill, that has never made a decoy out of cattails. Um, there's so many skills and tricks of the trade I can teach them, as well as just urban survival of what you carry in your car. Because as you know, as Utah, Wyoming, Idaho, Montana, there's long distances between places. And so you need to make sure that you're carrying the proper gear to not only help yourself, but maybe help someone else. So I want to teach that. I've got some kids, a grade school I'm going to go to. They're reading the book Hatchet by Gary Paulson about a kid that plane crashed, pilot died. He spent 58 days in the wild. Some of the, it's a little whatever, but they're sixth graders, and they want me to come and speak to them about survival skills. So I've got to bring it down to their level and show them the things, because I said, well, I figured maybe a small class of 20, there's 250. So
That's just
now,
just a little bit more.
yeah, so and I'm going to be in an auditorium. So I'm trying to tell myself, what can I show them and tell them that they should have in their day pack. Um, you can't carry a knife to school, but sometimes they're going to go on a trip. Most people here are pretty outdoors anyway. What should you have in your backpack that if you get lost or something happens to you, what are important things you should happen? And I'll just tell you what they are. Number one, a way to signal for help. You should always have a whistle. You should have some type of light. You should always have garbage bags, big garbage bags, because that's a shelter, the built-in shelter. Because if you're cold and you're wet, you got to keep evaporation from happening. You get inside a garbage bag, your body will produce some heat. Have a few things that you could eat, for sugar intake, and stay put. So those are really simple things that I want to tell the sixth graders. Say, this is what you need to have. Now go home and tell your parents, mom, dad, this is what I want in my pack. This is what we should carry in our car, and here's why. So it'll be an interesting, instructional thing in front of 200 and some kids, but I want to make a point with them, and that is, you can do it. You have the ability to do it. And if you're excited about survival now because you're reading this book Hatchet, then I'm going to make you even more excited. So when you get home, you want to go get this stuff together right away.
Yeah, it's
Go ahead.
interesting that you how you really want to involve the next generation coming up. And what's really great about that, Joe, is not only are you teaching them something on survival skills, but what's going to happen is those kids that you just mentioned, those kids are going to go home and tell their parents, this is what I need. So not only have you now affected the generation coming up, but you've also affected their parents because now you're giving two generations some information for survival as well. So what you're doing really is what you did with your mentors is you're really passing it on to the next generations.
There's no sense in having knowledge unless you share it. And so when I go to my rabbit stick gatherings or places where they teach a lot of Aboriginal skills and old skills, the mantra there is pass on the knowledge, pass on the traditions. So as a farmer passes on his skills to his kids, or an artist passes on his skills, to me it's the outdoor, it's outdoor education. It's not, survival is a misnomer because you seldom ever have to survive anything, because signaling is a big thing. But there are numerous news cases where kids a 5-year-old kid wandered off and was gone for 2 nights or overnight, whatever. But his parents had taught him enough to stay put. He had enough food in his backpack. He might have got a fire started with a light or something. But the fact is, he survived the night. And so if parents can just bring that to their kids and make it an exciting part of their life, whether it's a fishing trip, a trip to the park, the key is use technology wisely. I use it to find information. I study all the time. I try and learn something new every day. And for technology, it's at my fingertips. But I also tell my grandkids, put down the phone. Let's go outside. Because when you come see me, we're outside. And I don't bring out toys. We gather rocks and sticks. And if it's wintertime, we get food coloring out and we go to the river and we turn over rocks and they make mud. So it's the same way my kids were raised. So it's just important to get outside and touch nature. Touch it, feel it, smell it, taste it.
It's interesting, and I just remembered as you were talking about this, and I may get the details wrong, and maybe you've heard this. This just happened, I think, within the last month or so. I remember hearing this story about an elderly gentleman who was, he was out camping or out hiking, and he was fairly well prepared. But what had happened to him is he had kind of gotten lost. He wandered down by a lake, and something had startled him, so he lost his backpack. It had got into the lake, so he continued to walk out. And this is the next day later, I believe, next day or 2 days later. There's a group that's coming up, and it happened to be a group of Boy Scouts that were coming up. And so they were kind of passing, but one of the scout leaders said something didn't look right. So they went back and talked to the gentleman, found out all this had gone on. He hadn't eaten for a couple of days. But what's really interesting, Joe, when you talked about the food and all that, the the Boy Scouts gave him their food because they had prepared ahead of time. They had enough food. They were going to a camp. So it's really ironic how you bring this up about Boy Scouts and being prepared, and not just Boy Scouts, but anywhere's everybody being prepared because that helped them help somebody else.
Absolutely. It's the greatest motto in the world is be prepared.
And
Um, if you always say, well, should I take a coat? I go, well, if you take a coat and it doesn't rain, you don't need it, you still have a coat. But if you don't take a coat and it rains and gets cold, you don't have it. Don't burden yourself down with too much stuff, but be prepared for changing weather conditions, which is so common out here in the West. So just grab a few things that you need. And now people are on four-wheelers and side by sides and all this stuff. There's no reason not to. Carry, just so simple. We run out of water. We should carry a purifier. They're small, compact, But again, don't die of thirst when there's a stream right next to it.
right.
Deal with the diarrhea later. I mean, come on. But again, I tell people it isn't just to help yourself to be prepared, it's to help others be prepared, whether it's alongside of a road emergency, an accident, something in the woods. If you're prepared and you've got the gear to be prepared, you can help someone else in an emergency in an instant and possibly save their life, not just yours, but you're going to save the life of someone else.
Yeah, I was going to say what was really interesting about that whole story, Joe, was the elderly gentleman that they helped save, actually was at one time a scoutmaster.
Really.
Yeah, so pretty interesting.
Very
Joe,
cool. Yeah. Great.
this has been an amazing, amazing interview. I think anybody who watches this can tell from your energy, you've got a great sense of humor, and that really helped you through Naked and a Friend. It's helped you through life. You've got a very positive attitude. You try not to let any negativity get into you. You've got a great mantra. It's not if you're going to fail, it's when you fail, fail forward. And so as we wrap things up, for our mantra here at Eagle Freedom Presents is rise, inspire, and overcome. So between your mantra and the mantra that we have, what's something that you would like to leave everybody who's maybe is just struggling through life in general? It doesn't have to, it could be anything that they're going through. What's something that you would want to leave them with?
Surround yourself with positive people. You don't have time for negativity. You can't help everyone. Surround yourself with positive people. Anybody that's drains you, that brings you down, you don't need that in your life. Find positive people, find positive things to do, and it's just going to enrich your life. And always have faith. No matter what, always have faith because, you know, God's got you. He just does. Just have just simple faith, and just be around positive people. Don't go to places that are going to be negative. Just stay positive on everything, because you can only focus on what you can control.
All right, Joe. Well, listen, we want to thank you very much for joining me on this podcast. It's been great to have you here. You've got a great attitude and continued best of luck in working with the kids that you've been doing and leaving the generation and passing on to the next generation the wisdom that you've gained through your mentors and living life.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity. I appreciate it, and it's nice to hear about Andrea again, because she's a wonderful, beautiful person.
All right, Joe, thank you very much again for joining us. And thank you for joining us on this episode of Eagle Freedom Presents. By the way, in the show description, you will find both the link to the Naked and Afraid, The Darkest Hour episode, in case you want to watch that or you haven't seen it yet. And we're also going to include the link to his partner's interview that we did on the show as well. That was with Andrea Lopez. If you got something of value out of this episode of Eagle Freedom Presents, please be sure to drop it in the comments below. And don't forget to like and share this as well. That's it for this time. Remember that you too can rise, inspire, and overcome. Till next time, I'm Destin Rogers. We'll see you next time on Eagle Freedom Presents.